just like less than optimal
Yeah.
lymphatic function, a lot of times we see fluid accumulation. So people will get edema or swelling in their lower extremities, or maybe their rings don't fit so great, or maybe they see some puffiness in their face, some fluid retention under the eyes. A lot of people, so we see that physical fluid, but then in regards to some symptoms that we might experience, like felt experiences, are going to be some brain fog, fatigue, just kind of feeling like you're walking through jello, you know? I find that when my clients are feeling stuck and stagnant, almost like emotionally and physically, it can really be stuck lymph. We get things flowing and they're just immediately feeling better and more vibrant and alive and energized, which I think is so interesting.
How much importance do you put on the health of your lymphatic system? Leah Levitan, who is Lymph Love Club on Instagram, is incredibly passionate about the power the lymphatic system has to improve our health and well-being both today and in the future. If, like me, you didn't know much about it and certainly don't know what you can do to help support this incredibly important system in your body, then keep listening. You'll hear lots of practical advice, both for those who feel well as well as those who are struggling with a wide range of conditions. Leah is really a wealth of knowledge. I started by asking her what lymph actually is.
Lymph is the clear fluid that flows through our lymphatic system. It has a really similar component to seawater, as in it's salty and full of nutrients. But yeah, we've got blood flowing through our arteries and veins. And so for our lymphatic system, the other aspect of the cardiovascular system, we've got lymph.
Which is probably quite unknown to many, that there is another side to the cardiovascular system, because everyone, I think, generally, unless they know about it, just thinks blood, veins, arteries. So where does it sit in comparison to the cardiovascular system?
Well, I love that you started with the cardiovascular system, because we can all visualize that. We've all seen those maps and those roadways to our body, and we're like, oh, okay. So the lymphatic system runs right alongside of it. So you'll find lymph nodes, the little tiny organs of the lymphatic system, our little filtration stations, if you will. You'll find those kind of piggybacking on arteries and veins. And the lymphatic vessels are really interwoven in between all of those arteries and veins and kind of run right alongside of it.
Oh, wow. So it's, am I right in saying it's everywhere that the cardiovascular system is?
Yes.
Pretty much. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So why don't we know about it as much as we do? Is it just a textbook thing where, when we were growing up and we were learning biology, they didn't talk about it very much? Because I feel like that it's not got the press it needs to have.
I think it's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah. You're helping that.
I think, yeah, I love to think so. I feel like, so the lymphatic system has always been known as the invisible system. And one of the reasons for that is that lymphatic vessels are actually translucent. So they are clear, they are invisible. And yeah, I mean, it took us a while to discover it. And I think just like fascia, it was something that was sort of thrown off to the side, like, oh no, we got to look at the important stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't realize how important the lymphatic system was until, much later.
So my late granny, who was 100 when she died, when she was a GP, a doctor, and when she was learning in med school, she remembers them having the cadavers and literally sort of finding this film, which was the fascia, and sort of pulling that off a bit like it was cling film that had kept it in the fridge, literally pulling it off and putting it away, and no one ever questioning it, which is quite amazing. And I don't know how that suddenly changed, and yet such an important thing. And being more into movement myself, obviously I've got quite a good grip on fascia, but I really didn't about lymph until you popped up on my Instagram. And I thought, hey, I know what a lymph node is. Unfortunately, because of, often the connection with breast cancer and understanding about breast cancer progressing. but and obviously when you're ill. But I would say glands. I wouldn't think of it as lymph nodes, but that is the same thing effectively. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not glands,
They're
but
not
because
glands.
it's like they don't secrete anything like a
Sure.
gland would. But I think that's just how people look at these
Yeah.
mysterious little organs. They're just like, yeah, they're glands. Because we do have our tonsils and our adenoids that are part of the lymphatic system. So, when we do get that swelling of a lymph node, when we get ill, like an acute illness, that's an immune response from the body. And so, our throat can swell up a little bit, the lymph nodes can swell. And yeah, it's like a term that people use interchangeably,
Yeah,
but they're
sure.
little organs.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what is the main point of the lymphatic system? What's its main job?
Well, it's picking up, so it's basically ensuring that all of the cells in our body are cleaned and that homeostasis in our tissue is happening. So the homeostasis being part of like the fluid balance, making sure that, like, if we zoom in really microscopically,
Hmm.
the lymphatic fluid starts as the fluid that surrounds every cell in our body. And so when our cells poop, just like they do, and offload the things that they don't need anymore, they've
Yeah.
gotten the nutrients and the oxygen, they kind of poop it out into that cellular soup, or the body's stock, if you
Yeah.
will, soup stock. And so it picks up the cellular waste products that really don't belong, the things that could damage the body, just to make sure that all that stuff stays clean. So it's maintaining the fluid balance, it's cleaning our cells. And there's a lot of immune function within the lymphatic system. I'm one of those people where I'm like, your lymphatic system is your immune system.
Okay.
They're just sort of the same thing in my mind, because the lymphatic system stores and transports those immune cells. And so it's like when we get sick and those lymph nodes swell, it's that immune response where those cells are dividing, and the lymphatic system sort of shuts off the floodgate to the lymph node. And
Okay.
that allows it to fill with lymphatic fluid so that those immune cells that are growing inside the lymph node can sort of survey and try to process and eliminate anything that doesn't belong.
So it's got a really important job, basically. If we want to stay well, and homeostasis being wellness in every way, if we want to stay well, we need to really look after our lymphatic system. So what are signs when it's not working well? We've talked about the sort of swelling. Are there any other things that you can look out for, that you can be aware of? Perhaps not when you're having, as you say, sort of an acute immune response, but just perhaps low level.
Yeah, just like less than optimal
Yeah.
lymphatic function. A lot of times we see fluid accumulation. So people will get edema or swelling in their lower extremities, or maybe their rings don't fit so great, or maybe they see some puffiness in their face, some fluid retention under the eyes. A lot of people, so we see that physical fluid, but then in regards to some symptoms that we might experience, like felt experiences, are going to be some brain fog, fatigue, just kind of feeling like you're walking through jello. I find that when my clients are feeling stuck and stagnant, almost like emotionally and physically, it can really be stuck lymph. We get things flowing and they're just immediately feeling better and more vibrant and alive and energized, which I think is so interesting.
It is, and the flag immediately raises for me because I'm perimenopausal, and you say things to me like brain fog and fatigue and so on. I'm like, yeah, but how do I know whether it's my lymph, whether it's my hormones? Can you differentiate, or should you just treat it all as one and help your lymphatic system anyway?
I would treat it all as one. One thing that I forgot to mention about what our lymphatic system does is the lymphatic fluid will also carry hormones. And so it really helps to kind of regulate things as well, because it allows, the transportation, or at least like elimination, like taking something from step one to step two and trying to get it out of the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, there can be a hormonal aspect to our symptoms, and supporting the lymphatic system can really help. Sometimes clients will also get like skin stuff, whether I say stuff because it's just such a wide spectrum of stuff that can happen to our
Yeah.
skin. But we see things like rashes and hives. And so when the lymphatic system is not working as optimally as it can express on our skin as well.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
can have some gastrointestinal stuff. There's definitely a connection between our lymphatic system and our gut health for sure.
There's all sorts. So looking after, and actually one other symptom I was going to ask you about was headaches and neck pain and so on. Are those related at all?
They can be, yeah.
Yeah, because we're going to now move on to talking about how you help that lymphatic system, because you give brilliant tips online, and so they're great to go back to, which I know you've pinned on your page because it's so useful and I'm sure people ask for all the time. So it's a great little guide for people to quickly go to. But part of that is tapping and sort of rubbing. And I find this is me just getting personal insight basically. Is I find that when I have a headache and it's up here, then that rubbing really helps. But I wondered if that had anything to do with lymph or if that's something different.
Well, so in regards to the just lymphatic flow and where all this stuff, all these structures are distributed throughout our body, we actually have about 600 to 700 lymph nodes throughout. And a third of them are located from our collarbones up.
Wow.
And that is basically just showing how important the drainage is for our brain, because we actually have lymphatic fluid and drainage pathways in our brain that really are responsible for preventing neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and MS. So
course, yeah.
The lymphatic system plays a huge role in that and kind of clearing amyloid plaque. And so sometimes I think when we carry a lot of tension in our face just to begin with. I think a lot of times if we're super stressed, we're clenching, we're holding, we're wearing our shoulders as earrings.
Yeah.
And it can make it really hard for that lymphatic fluid to flow out of our head and neck. And so because it's a pressure system, I think that pressure can build. And I feel like I'm always kind of telling people to press their sinus cavities and, just on either side of their nose or between the eyebrows there, almost as like a instant pot quick release to sort of like get things moving. And all of the lymphatic fluid in the body, it all goes back into cardiovascular circulation just behind the collarbones. And so, this area can get tight. It can get restricted. It doesn't get enough movement. I mean, thinking about how our collarbone elevates every time we move our shoulder up. It's like we have these natural ways of supporting drainage. But then, we also work on computers. And
I was about to say, and I often in my class will ask, so how many times have you lifted your arms up to this height or above today? Because actually we can also avoid moving so much where we're literally doing everything sort of with the arm and then there's just hardly any movement at all. And yet we've got the whole ability to rotate a shoulder, but we don't do it because we don't need to, because we make everything convenient. We put it at the right height and, we make it easy for ourselves. And I'm always saying, make it hard for yourself. So that's actually this, this is another reason is to also think about your lymphatic drainage. So that's amazing. And so literally where? I'm fascinated. So literally just behind your collarbones. So if it's behind your collarbones, then how can you help stimulate that given that it's behind bone?
So the structures that I'm talking about, those are called the venous angles. So it's the right lymphatic duct that's sort of draining the right side of the head, the right shoulder and chest, front and back, the whole thing. And then the right arm. So that's kind of pouring, that lymph that's collected from that tissue is pouring into the right side just via like a vein.
Okay.
Or it cuts back into a vein, that lymphatic duct there. But on the left side, I just did a post on this recently. The left side drains 75 to 80% of the remaining tissue. So it drains everything else. It drains the
How
whole.
one-sided? How strange.
I know.
That's really odd.
Yeah, so the left side will drain the left side of the head, the left shoulder, left arm, and then our trunk and our hips and our legs, both sides to the left. And the reason for that is the thoracic duct. So there's just this little lymphatic structure. It's like the main lymphatic channel in the center of the body. And that's pulling all the lymph from the legs, the pelvis, the abdominal organs, so like liver, gallbladder, gut, reproductive organs, all that stuff. It's great. I mean, it's cool. It's just this one little structure that kind of passes through
It
our
does
diaphragm.
so much work. It's hard working.
Yeah, it's about the width of a pencil. So
that's crazy.
tiny.
And I did actually see your post because I remember, or maybe it was another one where you were talking about, I know it was another one, because you were talking about the amount of fluid that it's sort of processing on a daily basis because you were carrying some cans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Which
that right side is like 1 to 3 cans of fluid. And then the left side is maybe like 8 to 12 or upwards of 16 on the left side in about 24 hours.
It's really incredible. We just do not realize what's going on inside. We really just take everything for granted and assume it's all working tickety-boo, and it just necessarily it isn't. You don't know. What I was going to say with the left and the right was, so if you're left-handed and therefore you perhaps move more on your left side, do you think you're at an advantage to get that moving? Or is that just nonsense that I've made up on the spot?
Well, it's possible. I would like to think that it's possible just because of the anatomy there on the left side. But if somebody is not utilizing their diaphragm and they're breathing really shallowly and it's a very restricted breathing, okay. I would say that our diaphragm, that primary muscle of breathing, if we're not utilizing that, that's like the closest thing that our lymphatic system has to a pump. The lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. It has smooth muscle, just like the inside of like our gastrointestinal tract that sort of moves food along the way. So it's the same kind of muscle.
That has little hairs, doesn't it, that pushes food along? Is it the same in the lymphatic? Has it got something that sort of helps it to move that fluid along?
Well, we've got the smooth muscle, and then we've got these little flaps that prevent backflow. So there's like they're like functional units that make up the lymphatic vessels. And so they'll sort of contract. I like to do this. They'll sort of contract and push lymph forward. In our gastrointestinal tract specifically, we have those little finger-like villi or like tentacles lining the inside of the intestines. And so those aren't lymph nodes in there. It's like lymphoid tissue. And so the lymphatic system will digest the fats, or it'll pick up the digestive fats from the food that we eat, and it'll send it over to the liver.
So that's the fats in your blood that you're no longer using, basically. Is that right? No.
I don't know that I'm able to answer that. My understanding is that it definitely is helpful for maintaining those like levels of cholesterol. Like the lymphatic system will help keep our arteries squeaky clean. It'll try to keep plaque from accumulating on the walls. It's definitely the lymphatic system is responsible for kind of cleaning those. Yeah. But yeah, when it comes to just the gut stuff, that's more for ease. I think ease of use for the body. Our body likes to conserve resources,
energy. Yeah.
So it's like, here, we're going to put the lymphatic system to work and have it pull out all the digestive fat, and then the liver can do its thing.
Do its job. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
But I think that there's digestive fat, in both blood and lymph.
So I'm intrigued as well. So saying about the use of the diaphragm, I had a lady called Jane Tarrant on here from Link Breathing, who is all about breathing well for daily life. And she focuses on something called the D spot, which is the diaphragm, getting people to find where that diaphragm is so that they can assess how they're using it. But also she talks about the R spot, which is the ribs. So I've got my hands on the lower part of my ribs to look at whether they are expanding and contracting with breath. So that diaphragmatic use can really, you're saying that acts as a bit of a pump. So it kind of gives the lymph a bit of a leg up to get round because it's not got a heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Muscle activation is primarily how our lymphatic fluid gets around. It's kind of pushing and pulling that lymph, which that's how blood moves around too.
Sure.
But it's just, it's definitely that main duct that's sort of passing through the diaphragm, that motion of the diaphragm going up and down sort of gently strokes that main duct, making it like a really powerful lymphatic mover for like the deep lymphatics in our body
that we can't get to so well in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you talk about movement. So obviously the podcast called Make Movement Matter. And that's probably why we sort of linked on Instagram, because one of the key things for helping with lymph movement is movement. And I've heard you talking about the fact that sort of it's less the heavy exercise, beast yourself level of a movement that counts, and more the gentle movement. Is that fair to say? The sort of more little and often?
That's just what
both?
aligns that's what aligns with my philosophy in regards to just being one of those people that always had like a hard time being consistent with like very organized exercise. And I think it was just having a hard time wrapping my head around that. Yeah. But for whatever reason, functional movement, everyday movements, moving in ways that are challenging but are creative and fun, I find those to be the things that keep me going and showing up for my movement nutrition, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Very Katie Bowman and very true. And you know, her site is Nutritious Movement, and it absolutely is. It's such a perfect description because it's about getting all those micronutrients throughout the day, rather than just eating one solid big meal and thinking that's you done, and sort of spreading out and just chilling and not moving for the rest of the day. And I suppose if on lymph terms, if we need to be if it's a good for it to be moving regularly, then we need to be moving regularly. And therefore that little and often, and as you say, variety. I'm always talking in my classes about doing things a bit differently, challenging yourself to be creative with the movements, being a bit stupid, being a bit playful, being a bit childish, because then you're expressing yourself differently, but you're also just getting your body to work in a different way. And I presume that's good for your lymph, because then you're presumably accessing different parts of yourself, like you are with your musculature and your joints, in the same way with lymph as you are with your musculature. Is that right?
Totally. Yeah. But also it's just more fun, in my opinion. Not to say we shouldn't be lifting heavy things and challenging our body in that way. I think it's important to be able to have the ability to do a wide variety of things. So if lifting something heavy is hard to do, it's nice for those things to feel easier because we challenge ourselves to do them.
Yeah, but we can do that in the garden with a massive heavy bag of compost, getting that in and out of the car to go to the garden center. There's lots of ways of lifting heavy, or, having big stacked boxes and not thinking, oi, so-and-so, come and help me. But instead going, no, I'm going to try and do this because why not? Or lifting furniture, being capable, as you say, it's really, really key. But I love lifting weights too. So I like to do it all and get the range in. So the one thing as well I was interested in was what happens in your sleep to your lymph. Does it all, because you haven't got that pump system going, does it slow down? Is that a bad thing? And then should you respond to that in the morning with movement?
Oh, great question. Yes. Okay. So our lymphatic system does slow down a little bit because we are at rest, but something really special in regards to the brain drainage. We talked about the lymphatic system in the brain during deep REM. that's when it's most active, that cleaning process of the brain. So I think it's doing more in certain areas of the body and then doing less in others, because I think what everything that's been collected throughout the day, then the detox organs are kind of working on packaging, processing, and eliminating those things while we're sleeping. So it's like sleep is so important in that aspect, where it's like, all right, well, we're not prioritizing drainage while we're sleeping except for the brain, but all of the things that are happening while we're sleeping need to happen. And then, yeah, we wake up and we are a little bit more stagnant. We haven't had any water, we haven't moved. And so our lymphatic fluid is a little bit thicker. Our blood is a little bit thicker. We're just a little dehydrated. So I think to get things kind of jump started in the morning, I have just like a little bit of a routine that I do where I'll definitely get some fluids in. And then I'm doing the big six, Dr. Perry's big six, where I'm kind of rubbing, slapping, and tapping on those six lymphatic choke points of the body.
Can you go through them? Is that all
Sure. Right? Yes. Okay. So if you're not familiar with the big six, it's where our lymph tends to get stuck. So and you have to go in a certain order, because this is just sort of working with the anatomy and physiology of the lymphatic system. So number one is going to be that area behind the collarbones, right, where all that lymphatic fluid goes back in. When you press behind those collarbones, you're creating a little bit of a vacuum and you're changing the pressure so that lymphatic fluid can start getting pulled back into the cardiovascular system. Point number two.
Can I just ask, so you're just like pressing with your fingertips? Gentle, hard, what do we?
I like to like crisscross applesauce my hands so that I can get a good angle on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that.
This is where I'll kind of do some scooping. I'll kind of scoop towards the midline with my fingers just over the collarbones here, over that little triangle, that little crevasse.
Yes.
So yeah, you'd kind of rub that area before moving on to point number two, which is just the sides of the neck, like maybe an inch below the ear on either side. You can take one or two fingers and just do like some little gentle circles. You don't have to use a lot of pressure here. That previous point, we were kind of targeting deeper structures, so you could work a little deeper on that point number one. But you'll just kind of rub here on the sides of your neck, stimulating the vagus nerve, shifts the nervous system into parasympathetic, which
is what? Calming?
That's our rest and digest. So that's the portion of our nervous system response where we're actually healing and restoring, and that's where we want to be when we're healing.
And should you go in one direction?
Yeah, I usually will just go in some little circles. It's one of those where you just do it for like 10, 15 seconds each spot.
Not much. Because I'm still doing it. It's really nice.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Well, yeah, we're just we're just talking and stimulating our vagus nerve. So
it's always nice to do these things with someone else. Yeah. I don't know why, but yeah.
So that point dilates your lymphatic vessels and increases lymphatic flow. And then you move on to your armpits, either side, but doing both sides. There's about 30 to 50 armpits. Lymph nodes.
It's a lot.
We have so many armpits. So we've got about 30 to 50.
And like quite deep into the armpit. So the first point is quite a lot of pressure. Yeah. Because you feel like you can kind of lose your fingers in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So poking around in there, I get a little bit of the arm and a little bit of the rib cage as well, just because they are really in that axillary cluster. So that cluster is just kind of all through here.
Down to the side of your boobs as well. You can feel like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in the rib cage there. And then number 4 is the abdomen. So I usually will stack my hands and do some circles in one direction and then kind of change directions.
So whereabouts would you say is like optimum? So above your belly button, or?
I go right on top. Just like right in the center of your abdomen and making those little circles for 10, 15 seconds. Point number 5 is going to be the inguinal lymph nodes, just in the crease of the hip. So there's about 18 to 20 lymph nodes on either cluster there.
And again, if you've been ill, potentially you will have had some swelling there. That's something I've had. I had glandular fever when I was 18. and everything was raised in the neck and also in the groin area because everything was complaining.
Yeah. And then number 6, we've got a couple lymph nodes behind our knee. Our knee is a really common bottleneck area. As you know, it's like a little bit more prone to atherosclerosis. It's always a tongue twister every time I try to say atherosclerosis.
You've got to stick your tongue out a lot.
Atherosclerosis.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, amazing. And that's really doable because it's not too long. It's quite nice. You're getting in touch with your body, and it's only 6 points. So it's quite easy to remember. So,
yeah, it takes like 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then I would say then get down on the floor and have a little roll around and feel into your body before you get going, because for me, it changes my whole day if I literally start the day with some movement. But I always have a glass of water as soon as I wake up, actually, not because I feel particularly dehydrated, but I then know I'll feel so much better even just a few minutes later once I've had the water. And on fluid intake, is that so does it affect the lymph if you're dehydrated through the day, if you don't drink sort of consistently throughout the day?
Yeah, that'll definitely change the viscosity of the lymph, making it a little bit harder to flow because it is mostly water. So we gotta refill that. We gotta refill that cup.
The cup. Yeah, got it.
Literally.
Absolutely. So if you're feeling fine, you've got no pain or illness, do you think that movement is enough, or do you think that doing what we've just done and other things potentially are really kind of essential for keeping our lymphatic system nice and healthy?
I would argue that it's essential.
Okay. Love it.
I mean, only because it's such an incredible system that has like intimate ties to almost every major system in our body. It's very easy to take care of, especially the more that you know about it. So even just something as simple as like, okay, I know where these clusters of lymph nodes are. I'm going to move in ways that create a little bit of pressure or friction or something to keep those guys moving and grooving, massage them. They're clustered around our major joints for a reason, they're there for protection, insulation, but also movement of the body to pump the lymph and to stimulate these lymph nodes so that they can do their job, which is fight the good fight to prevent illness and disease.
I love that. Fight the good fight. Absolutely. Yeah. But then before we move on to if you have symptoms, you speak very passionately about lymph. So why have you honed in on lymph? Why did it become so important to you?
Well, at first it was it kind of caught me by surprise, the obsession. When I got certified in 2020, I really just thought, well, people are asking for this. They're curious about it. Because I had a few clients be like, do you know how to do this? Or do you know someone that does?
And these were your massage clients.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, I had a few questions, I would say within a few months time. And I was like, okay, people are really curious about this. What is it? I have no idea what manual lymphatic drainage is. So I looked into it, and that's where I found Dr. Perry. And I saw him speaking with such conviction about it. And of course, yeah, just being like, dang, like this guy's really passionate. There must be something to this. So I got certified, and I just thought, yeah, I'll just use it on my clients if they need it. And otherwise I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
So tell me what you mean by if they need it. So perhaps they wouldn't necessarily know they need it, knew they need it, know they need it. So,
at the time, I just didn't know. I didn't know who would need it or what I would use it for. I just thought, I just want to learn. But then I brought that skill set back into my practice, and I started using it, and it just immediately started like changing people's lives.
Wow.
In the sense of, there was always these clients that I just couldn't help, like with traditional body work. I was working on their muscles, working on their tissue, doing joint mobilization, pin and stretch, that kind of stuff. But for some people that were dealing with like chronic inflammation or chronic illness,
Okay.
chronic pain, sometimes deep tissue was just like not the tool to be using on them. And so once I implemented the lymphatic piece, those clients that were just not really seeing as much results with traditional massage, it just started moving the needle for people so much that I mean now I barely do traditional massage anymore.
Wow.
It's all lymphatic stuff. It's all myofascial release. So lymph and fascia and the nervous system, those are the three things that I target in my practice. Those are top priorities for how I approach the body, and that combination has proven to be like really, really powerful for people.
So
Yeah.
I don't know how much you know about why I do what I do, but I had chronic pain for 4 years from, I suppose, in a way, RSI by running on what I then found to be hypermobile foundation, and having lots of signals from my body that I just did not respond to. But interestingly, through the time of trying to recover, not at any point did anyone say to me anything about lymph drainage, about my lymphatic system. I was going to someone who did myofascial release, and that was really beneficial for me. Absolutely changed things. And she was actually the lady that put me in touch with Katie Bowman. And then I deep dived into everything she possibly has ever said or written. And that changed my world. And that's how I started to then climb out of pain, by changing things, the way I lived in my daily life, moving differently, but also having help from manual therapy and training my body differently in very developmental patterns and so on. But no one ever mentioned lymph. And I hear you speak and I think, God, I wish I'd known you back then, because perhaps it would have shortened it from 4 to 2 or whatever. And it's interesting when you talk about the nervous system. I've talked about it on this podcast a few times before, because also when I look back at my 4 years, there's a point, sort of a halfway point, where I gave everything up I was trying to do because I felt like I was getting nowhere. And it was at that point where I started to work with my nervous system, calming everything down and kind of letting some stuff go, that then I started to move forward. And that combined with the myofascial release, where I cried quite a lot. And yeah, so I really wish I had known. And I hope that if there's even one listener out there who hears this, who was in my situation, and that's why they listen, that hearing your story could, what you offer people could make a change. Do you have many clients who you sort of see my situation and then see them improve when you help them?
Yeah, definitely. We get a lot of folks that are dealing with chronic pain or chronic inflammation or mystery symptoms that they don't know where they're
Right.
coming from. They've been to every doctor, they've had every scan, and maybe they've got swollen lymph nodes and they have had them for years, just as they're trying to figure out like what is my body responding to.
Mm.
So it can be a lot of like toxicity things or environmental things that the body is just not able to, if the lymphatic system isn't able to get rid of some of this stuff. I mean, the lymphatic system doesn't detoxify, but if it's picking up all this stuff and the detox organs can't eliminate it, then it just sort of gets recycled. And that's when this
Okay.
lymphatic fluid can start to get really toxic and bog down our bodily functions. I mean, just all the physiological functions. If our cells can't be cleaned and scrubbed, just slows it all down. So it can be quite the healing journey for people.
Mm.
And it can be like a physical thing, mechanical or something, an old injury, an old surgery, fused vertebrae. I mean,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. We see all kinds of people, and it's so interesting because the lymphatic work is so robust in the fact that it can it can check a lot of boxes for people, regardless of what's bringing them in. It's really cool.
Yeah. A perfect coverall that you, as you said, you might as well do it anyway, because it's only going to do you good. A bit like movement. There's no negatives to moving more. And it sounds like it's the same thing. They are one and the same.
Yeah.
So we've done the big 6. Are there some little 6s? Are there other areas that you can work on yourself?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do just like a really shortened version, let's just say you were at your desk. If you just did points 1 and 2 to sort of open up, we call this opening the head and neck in the type of lymphatic drainage that I'm using. This is the Vater method. It's just like a clinical it's like a clinical type of lymphatic drainage. There's many different kinds out there and they're all
Okay.
a little different, but but this particular kind, it's just called opening the head and neck. And so you press behind your collarbones, do that little scooping and pressing, and you could tap if you wanted to stimulate your thymus gland and rub the sides of your neck and just to kind of get things moving. We'd mentioned diaphragmatic breathing. So just if somebody wanted to tap into their breath and take some nice, big, intentional, deep breaths, that's great for our lymph. Elevating our legs. I tell people to use gravity sometimes. I'm like,
Okay.
do a little muscle activation and raise your arms above your head, or lie on your back and lay your feet up, and you can rest them on a wall or a chair or anything like that. Like we can use gravity to help us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because there's a long way from the bottom of your leg back up to your trunk. So yeah, so you're just trying to give it a helping hand. That makes sense. And then I've also heard you talk about dry brushing as well.
Yeah, dry brushing is great. I think it's like the first thing that I ever did for my lymphatic health. And I wasn't even really sure what I was doing.
So
I think I was just
I have no idea. I literally have
good.
no idea. So tell me what you do. Do you get a normal hairbrush, or do you need a specific type of brush? Or
yeah, they make special brushes just for our skin, not like a hairbrush, but just like natural fiber bristles that just skim the surface of the skin. So most of our lymphatic system, it's made just beneath the surface of the skin, and that's where it lives, the superficial lymphatics. And so dry brushing the skin, it's really stimulating for the nervous system, just because touch and information and giving some sort of feedback to your body, it increases proprioception, so it helps us move better. Because our brain's like, oh yeah, that's where our knees and our feet and our ankles and shins are in space.
Yeah.
And they say that it's exfoliating and kind of opens up our pores so that our body, our skin is our largest detox organ. And so we're going to be offloading some things through our sweat.
Okay.
And yeah, so dry brushing really supports that as well. Just making sure that pathway is clear and we're able to excrete the things that need to be excreted.
And anything else? Anything else that people can do at home?
We've got a vibration plate in our office, and sometimes I'll have people stand on it. Sometimes when people are dealing with chronic conditions, exercise can be really difficult. I mean, so encouraging people to move in any way that's going to be supportive for their level of ability at that time. Sometimes people will use those tiny trampolines, rebounding up and down, or the vibration plate. And just know that you can create vibration in your body with movement if that feels better for you. So you can literally vibrate.
What about rebounding? I do rebounding in my classes. And one of the things that I love, I don't need to do it now, do I? I'm rebounding. It's just because I want to. But also I get them all going, and then I count them down so that we all stop at exactly the same time. And then I get them to feel inside their body, because there's always a lovely tingly I sort of describe it as electrical, but it's clearly a lot more than that, where everything just feels like it's moving and alive, but inside of you. And it's not often you can really feel those systems inside, but rebounding seems to be one of those things where everyone says, oh yeah, I can really feel that.
And that's those one-way flaps that we talked about earlier that prevent backflow. So it's like you're bouncing up and down, whether it's on a trampoline or the balls of your feet. you're pushing lymph up in the direction that it goes, where it's trying to get back to the heart. So it
So
just
they call
encourages that.
they call the calves the second heart. So it's not only for blood flow, it's also for lymph.
Yeah. Well,
Effectively.
the blood and the lymph, they work
They're
together all the
together.
time. So
Yeah, no, I've got that. And then for someone who is getting older or thinking about the aging process, obviously our muscles and our bones are sort of decreasing in mass. Is it the same for our lymphatic system? Does it age? And because thinking again about the calf muscle, and that if that gets weaker, then that can cause problems with the circulatory system. Is that the same for the lymphatic system?
yeah, it can slow down inevitably. Everything's kind of the less that we're doing, or the environment that the lymphatic system is in. It's all very responsive to external forces. So as long as we're being conscious and trying to support our lymphatics, a little goes a long way every day, and all that
Yeah.
stuff adds up. The 2 minutes of the rubbing and the all that stuff, that can really help.
Yeah.
And that's going to ultimately determine the quality and age of our cells. So
Yeah.
I think when it comes to biological age, part of caring for the lymphatic system is sort of turning back the hands on the clock a little bit.
And do you see it also, because it is this sort of clearing system, as also helping to work against getting longer term non-communicable, I can never say that, non-communicable disease illnesses? So things that where the systems have gone a little bit wrong in the body or the brain, whatever. Do you see that the lymph has a huge part to play in that?
Yeah. And I think as more research comes out, it's like they're already doing a lot of research to kind of monitor, like, what is happening, what is the role that the lymphatic system is playing in our neurological health and our gastrointestinal health and hormone health and things like that. So I think as we learn more, it gets more exciting. But the picture that's being painted for us with the information that we have is that, yeah, this is like our
Yeah.
anti-aging system. So, and that's why so many people are using it for cosmetic purposes. There's so many cosmetic reasons to take care of your lymphatic system, and then so many functional and restorative and regenerative reasons for supporting. So there's like,
when you say cosmetic, do you mean like to visibly look more young? Is that what you're meaning?
yeah, a lot of people will get lymphatic drainage on the face. That really it really relaxes the muscles, and it grounds our nervous system, and we just feel amazing after touching our face because there's just
And
so
like
many
you're saying,
nerve endings.
So just so that we can all look 20 years younger, so that we can all feel better. It's just like you're saying, pressing either side of the nasal cavity, pressing inside between the what are these called? Eyebrows.
We've got little sinuses here on the inside of the eyebrow there, that inside portion close to the eye.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, manual lymphatic drainage with your hands. That's a lot of like what I teach in my community, and then also on Instagram. I've got some videos on there where we're just kind of using our fingers to move the fluid underneath the skin. And so we're just increasing blood and lymph flow in the muscles in our face and the tissue in our face, and just keeping all of that moving. If you take a before and after photo. So
Really?
One of the challenges for the community last week was to take a photo before, do lymphatic drainage on the face, like follow along with this video for 15 minutes, and then take another photo at the end. And so people were kind of sharing their before and after photos, and it's like an energy shift. It doesn't really matter in regards to like a cosmetic standpoint. You're just sort of blown away by the difference that, people, their eyes just look brighter. Yeah. Their skin tone is even, their skin is rosy, and it just looks hydrated.
Healthy.
Yeah. So it's like there's just like a little glow that happens when you start taking care of your lymphatic system. It's pretty cool.
It's amazing. Yeah. No, I'm so intrigued. It's been really, really interesting to ask those questions that I wanted to ask, that I've been dying to ask you. The one final thing that we have to talk about, because you do a lot on your page, about your amazing suit, where you have got, which I presume you must have had made because it's just incredible, where it has all the sort of lines where the lymph nodes are and everything, so that you can be a walking diagram effectively. And so I really urge people to go to your Instagram, which is Lymph Love Club, to go and have a look, because it's so great. It's a 3D thing where we can all really understand what's going on inside. And I have to admit, I've got one of those anatomical model programs on my computer from when I was doing anatomy and physiology before I got certified with MoveNat. And I love just playing with it, taking all the different structures off, putting everything on. It's fascinating to look at. But the other thing that you talk about a lot on your page are boobs. And that's all about making us more aware that they need to move more. And for someone who has never seen your page and has no idea basically why you would need more movement in your boobs, can you describe the benefits of letting your boobs move more freely?
Sure. So the axillary lymph nodes in our armpits, those are going to be primarily draining all of the lymphatic fluid in our breast tissue. And so when it comes to the lymphatic system picking up the things that don't belong, whether it's excess hormones, sometimes people will deal with like cyclical breast tenderness. So that can be kind of an indication of like, oh, things maybe aren't draining out of the breast tissue as quickly as they need to. Sometimes people will get, they'll just feel congested in their armpits, or,
Mm-hmm.
they'll say they're puffy, like my armpits are puffy. And so fluid balance within the breast tissue, that little bit of like the roller coaster of expansion and shrinkage when we're going through different hormonal peaks. It just sort of it just helps it maintain a little bit more balance and flow there. And so our lymphatic system being sort of like our anti-cancer system, if we're allowing all of that lymphatic fluid to flow freely through the breast tissue, theoretically, I think that would better our odds of like lowering our risk of getting breast cancer.
Okay.
And a lot of bras nowadays are, they're made out of certain types of materials that aren't really breathable or necessarily good for us when it comes to coming into contact with our skin. There's a lot of elastic and underwire and support and compression, and it just can create these physical bottlenecks in
Okay.
our tissue, especially like the U-shaped underwire. I
Right.
would never say that bras cause breast cancer. They're just bras, but a lifetime use of a bra that is not allowing for lymphatic flow, and then the culture of not moving our shoulders enough. It's like our breasts are an extension of our shoulder girdle. That concept was thanks to Katie Bowman. Like, I don't think either of us would be here without Katie. She's the best.
No. Changed my life.
Yeah, she changed mine too. Move Your DNA. It just sort of like made everything click for me. That was before I even got into the lymphatic stuff. But that's when it really all started to make sense. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is like the thing that's going to keep us all alive forever.
Yes, exactly.
But she says that, breasts are an extension of the shoulder girdle. So then that gets you thinking like, man, like not only are we not moving our shoulders enough, and we're caking up our armpits with antiperspirants, and we're not sweating out of our armpits. And, and then we've got these physical barriers. So I think that the things that are hanging from our body are really designed to swing from our body.
And if we put it on the male perspective, they don't put their groin in a wired thing to hold it close into their body, do they? Because sorry to say the word, but testicles, we know they need to swing. It's so important. Heat regulation, all sorts. And yet we're not the same. It's interesting, the difference, because I can't ever imagine them putting something restrictive like that on them. compared to us. It's I
Yeah.
haven't worn an underwire bra since COVID, which
Nice.
I'm sure loads of people haven't. So I wear sort of a light sports bra type thing, but one that I can breathe in. And now if I ever try on, and it's a bit like when I try on my old shoes, like with heels, oh, it's agony. And I think, what on earth was I doing wearing these restrictive shoes? But it's the same with the bra. If I put it on, I can't breathe properly. It's actually sore. It literally digs in. And yet you go for years without questioning it because it's just what everyone does. And I think that's another thing that Katie Bowman, she opened my perspective onto thinking, why do we need to do this? Or, what's the reason that this has to happen? I started to question everything around me, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think some people do feel they need support, obviously from the perspective of running and so on. I believe it can be, I haven't got a very big chest, so I wouldn't know, but running particularly, I think can be really painful if you have got a bigger chest. So I can understand that, but I think there's some really great running bras that are not restrictive, that still allow for lots of movement. And in a way, they're probably designed to be more about movement so that you're not feeling restricted, so you are running well. So in a sense, wearing them all the time would even be better probably than underwired if you were choosing something.
Mm-hmm. And there's some really great companies out there too. Like there's a medical compression company that makes bras for women that are going through breast cancer treatment. So like all of the different types of surgery or recovery or lymphedema, maybe they've, had some lymph nodes removed and then they're dealing with fluid issues. But they also just make a great athletic bra, this company.
What's the name? Do you know? Can you say the name?
It's called Prairie Wear.
Okay.
Yeah, we can put a little link for them because it's so tight and compression and medical compression are two different things. If we can create a little bit of like a spiraling effect where something is tighter on one end than it is on the other, kind of creates like a cone, that actually helps the lymphatic fluid flow more optimally. This is how like compression garments are designed for people that have that have vascular issues.
So flight socks.
Yeah. So it's like we can wear compression and actually get some benefits out of it, but a lot of things that we see online might say compression, and they're really just super tight. So it can be as easy as, trying to find a company that's like, oh, okay, they're making like medical compression and it's really designed to help the lymph and it's tight, but tight in a good way.
In a good way.
In a smart way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for your time, Leah. I'm really, really grateful. There's so many fantastic takeaways that people, particularly if they don't know anything about it. But where can people find you if they want to find out even more?
My website is lymphloveclub.com and I'm on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube.
Ah, brilliant.
And it's all kind of falling under that Lymph Love Club category.
Perfect.
The same handle everywhere.
Love it. Leah Levitan's Lymph Love Club. Lots of L's. Love it. A bit like my name, Wendy Welton, has the Make Movement Matter podcast. Lots of alliteration. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, Leah. Really, really grateful to share your knowledge with my audience.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.